From high above his mountaintop in Oklahoma, Watchman Larry Taylor brings you The Edge Portal, produced by Dorothy Crothers.
The data. The Creator, He's bound by no such rule as time. He's at the beginning, at the end, and in the middle, all the way through, all the time.
You want answers? You want answers!
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Data?
Son, we live in a world that has walls, and those walls have to be guarded. Who's gonna do it? You.
Very simple.
Stand opposed.
No one would have believed in the early years of the 21st century that our world was being watched by intelligence greater than our own. They observed.
Data trails.
But as men busy themselves about their various concerns, they observed.
The Creator.
The Bible says there comes to be a time when time is no more. I think it was
A human given directions by the Holy Spirit. This great stuff. Very simple. Very simple. Very simple. Hello, folks. This is Larry Taylor. Back to you again. Got another radio show today, and I don't know if my main guest is here yet. That will be Richard Shaw. And I have another guest also, kind of a guest host in a way.
I've asked it on the phone.
Huh? Hey, Richard, you there?
Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I'm
just
good.
barely. You got a weak signal, but I can hear you.
Hey, Richard,
well,
how you doing? This is Augusto.
Hi, Augusto. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm down here in Florida.
Okay, this is Larry Taylor, and I'll kind of open the show up. Our guest today is Richard Shaw from Penlight.com. You can go to Penlight and look at a lot of the data Richard has, the projects he's got going on, and those he's been involved with, and also at the same time, he's producer of the Watchers series with L.A. Marzulli, and actually one of Richard's most, really what I call incredible projects. Lately it really has been, I call it a Richard Shaw film. It's Torah Codes, Into Darkness, and that absolutely, if you get a chance, get hold of Richard. Matter of fact, you can just go to Amazon.com. It sells through there too, and it's Torah Codes, Into Darkness by Richard Shaw. It's an incredible, thrilling ride into our time and the Middle East, of course. Israel's the center post, I guess you could say, but it involves the Torah Codes and the rabbis that Richard's very familiar with that are working the Torah Codes, and they're not really just fishing with you think of somebody with a fishing line and fishing in the Torah. They're not doing it that way. This is a very, when Richard talks about the rabbis, especially Glazerson, who he knows well, the techniques and Art Levitt and Eliyahu Rips and Herlick. I mean, I'm talking about people that literally delve into the Torah Codes, and as Richard told me once, Glazerson just literally lives the Torah Codes, and so they really are digging into stuff that's the most intriguing things I've ever seen, and if you get a chance to get a copy, like I say, Amazon.com, you can get it through other locations and through Richard's website. That's Penlight.com. And it's called Torah Codes Into Darkness. Now, I know also, and I'll get Richard to go into some of that, he's had another trip to Israel, and I know that he's working on a documentary involving that. He may not talk to us tonight about any of that data. He's also, I believe, looking at another Watchers series that's coming out with L.A. Marzulli, and I'll just let Richard, why don't you open up? And, hey, Richard, one thing we're really interested in a little later when you're talking and you feel the freedom to go to the, I guess you could say the Porter Ranch or the Alisco Canyon methane leak in California. That's not getting the news that you would think it would get at all, but this thing is massive. I mean, it's incredible what, you've shared and some of the YouTubes that I've seen on the news on this stuff. It's incredible.
Well, there's a lot of incredible things going on. Thanks so much, Larry, for talking about Torah Codes. Augusto, it's great to hear your voice again.
Hey, it's good to be with you again, Richard. I'm looking forward to what you have to share.
Well, we can start. I mean, there's a myriad of things going on. It's almost hard to keep up with it all. As Israel is in turmoil. There's so much going on there. And basically, I went there in November and did some aerial photography with a drone of an area around Qumran to basically see some of the things that were discovered in the late 80s by Vendel Jones. And then later, in another cave in the area with another expert who worked with Vendel in those days, and his name was David Abraham. And they actually discovered, and most people don't know about this, but it's common knowledge if you search enough and find it, but they actually found the priestly anointing oil in one of those caves, which I went into, that was basically buried 2,500 years ago during the time of King Solomon's temple when it was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar.
Wow.
The way they found it was by adhering to ancient Hebrew text in something known as the Copper Scroll that was found along with the Dead Sea Scrolls. Copper Scroll was found in 1952. There's information all over the internet about it, so I'm not divulging any secrets. But when they found this scroll, it took them decades to basically translate it, and Vendel, using that, found the priestly anointing oil, and then back in, it was 92 or 3, I guess it was, David Abraham, who's a really knowledgeable and great guy, helped to excavate another cave based on the descriptions given in the Copper Scroll, and found the spices, the incense used. Now, these things are like buried. People don't know that they exist, that they've been found, they've been recovered. If you try to go ask to see the anointing oil at a museum in Jerusalem, it's in some back room somewhere. The spices apparently were for safekeeping by Vendel Jones' daughter. And at first I heard she was living in Lebanon, but now I think somewhere else. But in my opinion, they need to be brought back and analyzed. And according to legend, those spices were made from herbs that grew in the area of the Dead Sea, and the Romans tore them all down and took them with them back to Rome, of which they all died, and would grow again in that climate. So they're all now extinct species of spices, and yet they have, what I've seen in photos is a really large bucket of these things. But for the anointing oil to still be found after all that time is absolutely profound, in my opinion.
That's incredible. I mean, that's absolutely incredible. Augusto, anywhere along here you have a question, just chime in, because this is the most intriguing stuff. I didn't know what Richard was going to share with us. I knew you had some stuff, but I didn't know where he was going. This is incredible.
Well, this I can talk about. We also went underground, where you can pay to go in, but basically it's called Solomon's Quarry, and it's where all of the stones were carved out from underground to build the original temple. And this is a mammoth underground structure. I have great pictures of it. It's really quite incredible. And even today, we're not even sure the technology that they used to do it. Fortunately, it was limestone, so it wasn't like it was super hard. But those stones were quarried there, and that's what the temple was made from. And legend has it that there were tens of thousands of people working in that underground quarry at the time. So all of these things are are really very fascinating, part of history, part of Israel's history, and spoken of in the Bible and in other places, the book of Maccabees, which the Jews have additional information about all of those things. So that's one thing that I was doing there. I've been asked to also do a Torah Code 2. Now, whether we actually get to do it or not depends on a couple things. One is whether we can raise the funds to do it, because it's expensive to do this kind of work. And two is to, I can't hardly make a film about the Messiah codes without mentioning Yeshua. And that's a huge sticking point with the Orthodox rabbis.
That's true.
So that's a problem I'm working with right now. I think I could make the film otherwise, because I think Christians getting the movie would wonder, well, where's Yeshua? And also, if it basically it's mainstream distribution for the film, it would to most people it would appear, even though it wouldn't be, as Jewish propaganda or something. So it could actually hurt their cause to release it without all the facts. So I'm just basically going through that process right now, and I know I've been criticized in the past for not showing Yeshua in these codes, but I have my reasons for it because of who I'm working with. And I've tried to separate both subjects as best I can, but in this case, I don't think I can.
Well, you do come out, so, Richard, a most recent code, I guess one you call the secret code or whatever, which I'm sure most people don't have a clue what you're talking about, but talking about Messiah.
Yeah, I lost what you were saying there, Larry.
5776, which is 2016, and it's very intriguing. I mean, very intriguing, You there, Richard?
Are you there? Everything went away here for a second.
Must have. Can you share with us about that code? I think you said Glazerson had done that one.
Well, the last two times Glazerson has been to L.A., once was in May, and let me know if you don't hear me for some reason, and we'll try a different way of communicating. But I have a good signal here, so I don't know what's going on. Back in May, he came excitedly to show me all of these codes that he had found about the year 5776. I believe you may have seen that, Larry.
Yes, I've seen that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm just making sure we're still connected.
Yeah, we're still connected.
Okay. And then this time he came saying that now they had found some amazing codes based on the secret number of God. Now, I've heard a lot about numbers because of Glazerson, but this was news to me. I didn't know what he was talking about. And basically the secret number is the number 1820. And I didn't know why that was so secret, but it's really quite simple, actually. It's if you take the number, the gematria for the Hebrew word God, that number is 26. Incredibly, if you add up the numbers G-O-D in English for the word God, based on their numerical order in our alphabet, they also add up to the number 26. Isn't that interesting? So in Hebrew, the word secret in gematria adds up to the number 70. So if you multiply 26 by 70, you get 1820, which has become known as the secret number of God. You go, well, that's interesting, but what difference does that make? Well, when you start researching it, you find all of this incredible stuff that I have no explanation for. The first word in the book of Genesis, in the beginning, is in Hebrew is I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, but it's like Breshit. Its number is 1820. the number of words spoken by Jacob and each of his wives, Rachel and Leah, add up to 1,820 words.
Wow.
The number of Hebrew characters in the creation story, so this is basically, I don't know where it ends, and I haven't been able to have anyone show me where it last ends, but basically, I would imagine after Eve was created, in the creation story, would be the last creation thing, and perhaps even after the serpent. I don't know if it goes that far into it, but the number of words of Hebrew characters in the creation story adds up to 1,820. Then, in the book of Exodus, it's the 11th or 12th chapter where the story changes. It goes from a story into actually God giving them the law. The number of sentences in Genesis until the law is given in the book of Exodus is 1,820 sentences.
Wow.
And it just goes on and on and on. It's just like, wow. I mean,
it's not a chance. None of this could be by chance. This is all orchestrated by Creator. You there, Richard?
Praise God.
Richard has dropped. I'll have to call him back. Hold on.
Okay.
That is very interesting what he's sharing, Larry.
Oh, my.
You know, all these artifacts are being found in the Middle East now. All of a sudden, all these ancient artifacts and, you know, Nazi artifacts and ancient artifacts are being found. So I'm just expecting any time, you know, that some incredible finds are going to take place there.
Yeah,
but I would like to hear
right.
his take. I would like to hear his take, Larry, on if he has heard anything, or if he has seen maybe even the video that Rabbi Rami Levi did with a 15-year-old boy, Nathan.
Yeah, he knows about that because he sent me a copy of it talking about it, so we can bring that up in the conversation and see what he thinks.
I'm back. Everything went away here for me on this end.
Hey, Richard, we were just talking about you.
Yeah, Augusto had a question for you.
Yeah, I saw that, and I sent that to you, Larry, because I thought it was so interesting. And I had a Jewish friend of mine in Portugal send that to me, and I actually think that Casper McLeod may have sent it to me before then. But the problem that I have is I get hundreds of emails, sometimes with several links in each one, and I just can't look at them all. It's just beyond my capability. This time I decided to click on it, and once I started in it, I was amazed by it. And this kid was saying things that were
one of the interesting things about it, Richard, is, you know, you sent it to me, and of course it's in, I guess they're talking Hebrew, but the captions are in English, and I got so intrigued with the descriptions of this 15-year-old that had that near-death experience and had left his body, and some of the things he was shown, not only shown about his own life and existence, but then shown about the future. Some of this is some things that I can relate to, but that I've never told other people. And so let me tell you that when you sent that to me and I watched it, wow, it hit me in the gut. I mean, boy, there was some originality in there that he couldn't have known. He could not have known spiritual applications that were so original that some things I bumped into. But go ahead, Augusto. You was going to ask him.
Well, you know, I watched that, and, you know, like everything you see on the Internet nowadays, you kind of watch it, you know, with caution and double-check, make sure that it's genuine. But the thing that strikes me about this as genuine is the fact that, this young boy had an experience, and a death experience, where he was taken into the presence of the Most High. And, you know, and he shared this in a setting that had many rabbis there, which are totally, they're very skeptical about the whole thing. And you can tell by the questions they were asking him that they kind of had a problem with this. And I mean, none of them was able to discredit the experience of this young boy, and no matter what they asked him, I mean, he had a good answer, and the rabbi that was interviewing him, I think he's bought onto that, and he really believes that this is genuine from the Lord, and so it was very, very interesting, and I just wanted to get your take on that, and based on the Torah codes that you have done with the rabbi, Glazerson, and so forth, and I just wanted to hear what your take on that particular news.
Well, it was pretty incredible, and as you guys know, I've been really interested in NDEs for 20 years or more, and I have a friend that I write occasionally, Dr. Jeffrey Long, who's what I would consider the national authority on the near-death experience. I don't know anyone that's more entrenched in it than he is and has more facts. And he has a tremendous website. Have you guys ever been to his website?
I don't guess
no,
so.
I
don't
haven't.
remember the name.
Well, you would be tremendously entertained and amazed by it, because it has, I don't know what the number was up to, but it could be up to 5,000 actual case histories of near-death experiences, all written out, forms filled out by each person, and all available for reading on the net for free. And it's at nderf.org. So nderf.org. And it's an incredible website, and Dr. Long has been involved with the experience for years. In fact, we even interviewed him way back a long time ago in Watchers 4, when we also interviewed Howard Storm, who had a near-death experience that was kind of hellacious. And you may remember that one, Larry.
Oh, I remember that one. That kind of shook me too, and of course, his didn't start out so well. His experience, it came out okay in the end, but it didn't start out too easy. So I was taken with that one.
It was scary.
I saw that in the Watchers. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was pretty terrifying, but I've read so many of these, or I've heard people talk about their experiences, and there's so many great ones now as examples. And there's so many similarities between them that we now pretty much have a good picture of what happens after we die, although once kind of the physical parts of it are go away, everyone has their own personalized experience to some extent. Now, this boy that we were discussing is a Jewish kid. His whole testimony is given in Hebrew, and so they're putting up basically subtitles so you can tell what he's talking about. But his first part of his experience, the other rabbi there said, and it felt like your body came out through your nose. A lot of people, as crazy as it sounds, a lot of people say that they felt their spirit come out of their body through their eye sockets. Some people say different things. I mean, this is something I've heard many times before. Some people say they can actually see the silver cord that attaches our spirit to our bodies. Some people say that they felt it or heard it when it snapped when they left. I mean, these are really intriguing things. I'm very intrigued by this, very intrigued. And my own mother had a near-death experience, and when I was a kid, I didn't know whether this was just a story she was telling me, or if I should believe it, or if it was one of those things mothers tell, or what, But as I've gotten older and studied it more intensely, I thought this kid's story had some really unique elements to it. Now, I actually talked yesterday with Professor Robert Haralick from City University in New York, who called me. We discussed this briefly. He said, well, you have to be careful because there's some Judaic individuals that are trying to push the Judaic faith on people and will embellish things to make that happen. Now, that's what Professor Haralick said. Okay, since it was a 15-year-old kid, who was just answering to questions that he was being asked. He didn't seem like he was coming up with something that wasn't right off top of mind for him. And he went into this tremendous story where he was shown all the good things and bad things he had ever done in his life, everything in tremendous detail. Every second, split second of his life was relived in a very short period of time. I've heard that before, too. He said it was completely humiliating. But yet everything that when he did something good, it was like a huge thing. It was like, wow.
I like that part. That blessed me when he said that.
Yeah. It's like, well, Yeshua talks about there being gifts for doing good things. And you can't live your life thinking, oh, great, I'm going to get another great gift. You can't live your life that way. And you don't even know what that means in this life. What does that mean for getting, rewards in heaven for stuff? And apparently that's really true, and it's a lot bigger of a reward than we had ever anticipated it being. But, believe it as it may, I thought what was interesting about this kid's, he went into, they asked him, well, did they show you anything about the Messiah? And that gets back to our original topic, Larry, about 5776, the year of the Messiah, that's in all these codes and gematria multiple times, for which we have no explanation. But the things that he said were so much like stuff like you'd read in Matthew 24. Now, this is coming out of a Jewish kid's mouth. Mm-hmm. Basically talking about this guy and how all of the nations would suddenly want Israel and would stand against Israel, and there were 70 nations that ended up coming against Israel, and then there was something snapped, and World War III just happened, and that Obama was in the middle of it.
Well, I'll tell you
that's
what.
Interesting too.
Let me interrupt you right here, Richard, just for a second. I don't know if
Sure.
you've seen the post I did today or not, but matter of fact, I got the news flash from Bill Koenig, his watch.org blog, his news blog, and it's coming out of Israel. Most of the information is coming out of Israel, reporting that that Obama has notified the Democrats and Republicans and other people that he's running for Ban Ki-moon's. He's officially in the running for Ban Ki-moon's Secretary General of the UN. Now, Ban Ki-moon's term expired December the 31st this year, and I've often wondered how would Obama project himself in world politics or the world political system if he just was only the president of the United States, and of course, I won't even talk about his track record, okay? But
and that's a scary thought.
Go there. But the interesting thing is, and the topic of the headline was that Netanyahu is already busy meeting with Arab nations trying to thwart or block Obama becoming the next Secretary General or leader of the United Nations, which apparently seems to be his plan. So the Torah codes and what this boy is saying and other things is that really highlights a little bit of what we're being told, if that's true, and it's coming out of the news.
That's very interesting. I appreciate you telling me about that. I hadn't heard that yet, but I think I may have mentioned in the past, I think we found out about this in 2012, but one of the Torah Code researchers from the original team named Doran Whitston has a website, and on that website he had posted a Torah, it's a code, it's not a Torah code, but it's a Bible code found in the book of Ezekiel. In the 38th chapter, the word Obama is encoded every 7 letters. Now, we don't know what to do with that. Does that mean that Obama is going to be part of this attack from the north that gets thwarted by Israel during that time? Is it time stamping him?
Well, that's what this young kid said.
Occurs? Yeah.
Isn't that what this young boy said
in
that experience he had?
That's
yeah,
right.
Richard.
That's why I thought that was interesting, because
Yeah.
he basically goes on by saying that in his vision that Obama is killed and buried in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a strange thing.
Well, only that, he also, if this is true, he also says that Obama leads this. This is Obama's plan. Obama leads this invasion.
Yeah.
And I was wondering until today. Yeah, I was wondering until today, how could Obama, as President of the United States, really lead that type of invasion? But if he goes in as the UN, the leader of the UN, I can now see how that part might be played.
Well, he even called him Magog.
Yeah.
I think I remember. He said that.
He said
he called Obama Magog.
Remember, he said Obama is God. He said.
God.
Yeah, and he said he said that as well.
And that's what Glazerson says he's found.
Mm.
Mm.
So it's these things are gradually emerging, and it's very complicated, and we certainly don't have all the answers, and all we can do is read the scriptures and wonder, is this what it means? And we've been wrong before, so I don't want to make rash predictions.
Right.
Thus saith the Lord in any respect.
That's right. But, on the other hand, guys, I could see now why the Lord is always telling his people to be alert and watchful for them to watch.
Sure. Well, another thing that this kid said, which really freaked me out, which is one of my most interesting characters because it just kind of piqued my interest every time I read it. I love the crazy characters that are in the Bible, the crazy beings that is it's like, wow, what does that look like? Like in Revelation, there's this being that stands at the throne that is full of eyes. Remember that?
I do.
What's interesting,
right.
What's interesting, if you read the book of Enoch, and a lot of people don't consider it scripture or consider it as anything to be taken seriously, I would beg to differ in that opinion, because in the book of Enoch, it also mentions that same creature. Now, that book was written, 500 years before Revelation was. Mentions this creature full of eyes who stands at the throne, kind of like guarding it from every angle. And this boy said he was standing by this creature full of eyes. Now, I would love to talk to that kid, and that's one thing, if I had to do this film, I want to interview him myself and ask him some other questions that the rabbis may not ask because they haven't studied the New Testament.
Right.
That would be interesting. That would be. When I was listening to this interview that they did with this kid, and I noticed the questions that were being given to him by this rabbi, and they were, of course, coming from a rabbi, and he was trying to kind of push his way and kind of mold his answers to comply with the rabbinical belief systems and the Jewish belief systems. I saw that, but I agree totally with you. It would be awesome if someone could interview this young boy, and so that he would be freer to answer questions without having all the rabbis just piercing him with their eyes, and just waiting for him to answer, and slap him back if he said the wrong thing. But I was wondering, what would he say, because he kept saying one thing that was very interesting too, Larry and Richard, which was, the Messiah is here. The Messiah is here.
Yeah.
I thought that was very interesting.
It's very interesting. I don't know what to say about that, because we're told in the scriptures that, like lightning, it'll be when the Messiah appears. And then we're told in other scriptures that how's it phrased? But it's an event that everyone will know when it happens. It won't be like, who's this guy? That kind of thing. And yet, there are these stories that we hear continuously now, with great rapidity, where Jesus seems to be appearing to isolated Muslims in Iran. I mean, it was in Watchers 9, where we interviewed a Christian pastor basically with his features covered and basically his voice distorted and everything, so he wouldn't be murdered as soon as he got home for doing this. But people have been seeing visions of Christ into their homes, knocking at their door, which is very weirdly scriptural. I come and knock at the door, Jesus says, and that's what he's physically doing in Iran, which really is
kind of
incredible.
interesting. Yeah, it is dangerous for them to talk about that in certain sections. And what's interesting, I've read some books by two really great authors. One is Joel C. Rosenberg, and the other one is Davis Bunn. And Davis Bunn's in England, and Rosenberg, of course, just moved to Israel, but he's from the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And both of those two have talked to witnesses that have told them about the appearance of the Messiah and him revealing himself to them, and all of this is kept secret, but they've embedded it in some recent books. They're fiction novels, and they've embedded those secrets in those books, and I find it so fascinating because just out here in general public or general media or even in the book world out there, there's not a clue this is going on except secrets in these fiction novels, you know, and of course what we're saying. But it's very intriguing what you're talking about. It's very intriguing, and I just have to say.
Well, the other thing he said too was.
That's something I would expect Jesus to do.
The other thing he said that was very interesting too was when he said, he made a comment that when he was asked when will these things happen, because he was sharing that there was going to be a massive nuclear holocaust where millions were going to die, and Israel was going to be decimated, and. So then, the rabbi asked him, he said, when will these things happen? And the young man said, soon. And then the rabbi came right back and said, what do you mean soon? 10 years, 20 years, 3 years, a year, a few months? And the young man said this, very, very soon. These things are imminent. And so with that in mind, I also wanted to share with you, Richard and Larry. On our last newsletter, I did. It was based on the year of Jubilee, 2016, which began in the last Yom Kippur, and I talked about about the cycles. The cycles, the sabbatical cycles, the Jubilee cycles. And also, I talked about the seventh-day cycle. The Lord made the day, God made the day, the earth and its inhabitants and the animals and so forth in 6 days. And on the seventh day, He rested. And so I went through all of that, and I began to share some interesting things that happened with this Jubilee year. And that is that this is not just any Jubilee year. All Jubilees are important. But this one, of course, was accompanied by, right before the Jubilee started on Yom Kippur, we had the tetrads, the blood moon tetrads, which is not common in itself. It's very rare, okay? But that is not all that there was. Regarding this Jubilee. This Jubilee happens to be the 70th Jubilee since the Israelites entered into the Promised Land, into the land of Canaan back in 1416 B.C. And not only that, so that 70 is a very significant number, but it is also the 50th Jubilee since the coming of Messiah, Jesus Christ, Yeshua. So what are the chances of all of these things coinciding with this Jubilee? And again, we're not saying that, that the Messiah is coming this year or anything like that, the rapture. That's not what we're saying. All we're saying is that there is a number of things that are coming to a head all at the same time. Very important things. Very important things, Richard, that have not happened before ever. And they're happening now. And so all I'm saying to the people is, and I would like to get your take on this. All I'm saying to the people is, you need to have your wits about you. You need to be sure you're ready spiritually, because these things that are beginning to happen and are happening, they are very extremely rare, and we have never seen anything like this. Chances are we may never see this again, at least not in our lifetime.
No, and I think most of what's strange is that I have a lot of Christian friends that believe this is unusual, but none of them analyze it like my rabbinical Jewish friends do. They don't get into it to where they're studying every little tiny thing. I mean, it's just that when you start doing that, it gets really weird. Like Glazerson made, he found a table that has all these words in parallel rows. Now it says like Mashiach Tevet the 10th, which means Messiah December 22nd. That was last December. We don't know why. We don't know what the 22nd has to do with anything. We don't know what happened on the 22nd. But the fact that we had that word appear, and then also next to it says Elijah, and then it says, will send his messenger, sometimes referred to as an angel. Then another one says, will come. And then 776, which is implied 5776. Now, here's the real kicker to all of that. These are in parallel rows next to each other, some of them touching, and all with a skip of 1,820 characters.
Wow.
Now that I can't explain that. When I saw that, I'm going, well, Brits thought it was significant, but yet a lot of the Torah code researchers are hugely skeptical of everything. It's hard to get. The reason why my film was only 65 minutes long is because it was very, very difficult for me to get everyone to agree on tables.
I believe you.
It took days. And I said, guys, I don't have any more time. This movie's got to come out. And Glazerson, to me, has a real gift. He's considered more or less a romantic in that circle. But I do believe that God's gifted certain rabbis with extra spiritual gifts, whether or not they call themselves Christian. They're still rabbis that have unusual amounts of insight. And I've seen this in other rabbis and not just Glazerson. I think Glazerson has a gift. And I've told him this. I've written him letters. I said, look, no matter what anyone else says about you, I believe that God's given you a gift. This is all this man does. He's 78 years old, just recently had a birthday. And all he does every day is look up Torah code tables. Constantly.
That's his life, isn't it? That's absolutely his whole life.
His life. He sends me at least 3 letters a day. Today, I don't know how many he sent me. We communicate daily. I love this man greatly, as if he were one of my own family. He feels comfortable at my home. He hangs out here. We work upstairs in my studio all afternoon sometimes, and he shows me all of his stuff. I think it's sad that more people aren't paying attention to him. I really do. Because I think what he has to show is so profound at times. It's just it's mind-boggling. Now, this other stuff, he's not really so much a gematriist or someone that looks up the science of numbers. And a lot of those people that do that are what's known as Kabbalists. And a lot of Christians think, oh, that's of the devil. But no, it's just a different way of looking at things. I respect all my Jewish friends. I'm always curious about what they have to say about anything, because it's maybe something I don't know. And I'm interested in learning about this stuff from them. And the gematria that's being found is unbelievable. I mean, there's constant references to 1820, to 5776. And it's gotten to a fever pitch there in Israel, so that Glazerson told me in his last visit that a bunch of rabbis that believe the Messiah is imminent have rented an office in Jerusalem and all meet there just to look up gematria and codes about Messiah. That's all they're doing now.
Wow. So there's a big interest going on right now there on the
Messiah. It's breathtaking. And even my Jewish friends that don't believe in Yeshua are welcoming the Holocaust. They know that has to happen. They said, bring it on, because until that happens, the Messiah cannot come. They don't care if they live or die. They just know that has to happen before the Messiah can return.
Well, they're preparing this Torah scroll. It's been written to present the Messiah upon his arrival. I mean, this came out in the news, in Breaking Israel News, in December 15th of last year.
When I was in Israel in November, I met the man who put his own money into building the restoration of the Temple Institute. And he was a Jewish rabbi that wore the Torah on his head like they do in a little box, and they tie it around their head. And he's getting really old now. He's an elderly guy, real sweet man. And we sat in this room, and around him were replicas of all the things of the temple, a replica of the Ark of the Covenant, of the table of showbread, of the ephod, or what Christians usually refer to as the ephod. It's really the ephod. And all of these things were there, and I could look at them and get a better idea. And they painstakingly copied the biblical account of what these things look like. So I really think that I have a good idea. And the Ark was way different than I thought it looked. Because you always have the Indiana Jones Ark in your mind, right, with the two kind of streamlined angels kind of facing each other. Well, if you look at the one they built, the wings of the cherubs on the top of the Ark are like vertically lifted up and splayed out, and it's menacing looking. You look at it and you get kind of chills. It's like, whoa, this is serious. And, we have to tend to believe that all these things still exist somewhere.
Wow, that's incredible stuff. Absolutely.
Now,
it's really it's just unbelievable.
In one of his, Torah Bible codes, Rabbi Glazerson, and there was another article that I got also posted on Breaking Israel News from December 31st, 2015, where he hints, there is a hint, and this is where I want to ask you a question, since you know him so well, and he may share some things maybe with you that he may not share publicly, but he hints to the fact that 2016 is ripe for the Messiah. And and I was just talking about that before, about this particular Jubilee for 2016, which is 5776, which is what he came up with.
According to Jewish mystical texts, this Messiah will appear in the 6th millennium, which is now, after a sabbatical year. That's part of the whole deal, and also within the generation that Israel's brought back together. Now that generation is getting pretty thin at this point. It has to happen soon, or there won't be any of that generation left.
That's right.
So we do have these restrictions that, well, maybe it'll be another 20 years before it happens, or maybe we just think because things are so strange in the world that it has to happen this year. But I don't know. I think we're under, when you see all of the Christians that are being martyred by ISIS, when you see the general tone of Christianity being squelched around the world, even by our own president.
Absolutely.
When you see basically lies and deceit being people in executive positions in countries all over the world are not telling the truth and are mismanaging their countries. I don't know what Merkel's thinking of in Germany. I can't imagine what she's doing, but But the globalists are trying to, as best that they can, it appears anyway, to someone looking at this rationally from the outside, that they're trying to create chaos by letting all these immigrants in. And I mean, here we had, like, during the New Year's, where Muslim immigrants were setting off fireworks in crowds of people and raping the women in Germany. It was so uncalled for and so barbaric and so disturbing. No one even knew what to do. It was like, what do you do? Right. Someone who's in the open public is raping a woman.
And that's what's shocking, Augusto and Richard both, is the fact that I was in law enforcement. You know, I retired from law enforcement. I was in it for years. And for the police to say, we don't know what to do, I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You know, and then, of course, in America now, we've got police today. They don't know what to do in America anymore either about crime. It is just incredible.
Exactly that stupid mayor that says, you know, don't say Islam is a, you know, violent religion. When that cop was shot 3 times in the arm, and you know, it was a Muslim extremist, Islamic extremist that shot this cop, and here's the mayor coming out with a bizarre statement like that. I mean, it goes beyond all rational thinking. It's like, wait a minute.
Well, they on Fox, they did connect the mayor, this specific mayor, with the Obama administration. So I wasn't too shocked after that.
You got the Obama administration is completely a sympathizer to the Muslim Brotherhood and to Islam.
That's right.
I mean, that's clear as crystal at this point. I mean, there's no doubt about it anymore. At one point, we were
and as a matter of fact, you know, one of the things you don't hear is you know, I haven't done it in a while because I only do it when the Lord has me do it, but there's sometimes I've written certain leaders, you know, and one of the leaders that I sent a warning to years ago was just before Mubarak. What was the Egyptian president just before Mubarak?
My mind went blank.
I
even have Torah codes about him.
Been a lot of water under the bridge.
Nasser, was that Nasser?
No, it wasn't.
No,
it was the one after Nasser. There was Nasser, and then it was this one. Dayon, was that his name?
Hang on, I'll find it here. Anyway, go ahead. What you're saying?
Yeah, Nasser was his leader, and then it was him, and then it was Mubarak. But anyway, the daughter of
Mubarak
of this
was just before Morsi. Is that what you meant?
Well, that's the thing. The daughter of this leader that was assassinated, he was the one that actually made the peace deal, if you'll remember, with Rabin. Remember?
Oh, you're talking way back.
Wow, I'm old. I've been around a while,
guys. I thought you meant Mubarak, who was deposed, and then Morsi took over, and Morsi was sided with the Muslim Brotherhood, so the military came in and removed him.
The daughter of this leader that was assassinated, that had signed the peace treaty with Rabin.
I think you're talking about Anwar Sadat, no?
Anwar Sadat, that's the name. Anwar Sadat. Yep, Sadat. Anyway, the daughter of Sadat, when actually the new leader in an uprising overthrew Morsi, and he went to prison in Egypt, the daughter of Sadat finally came out and said Morsi was the one involved with the Muslim Brotherhood that had my daddy assassinated. You know, Anwar Sadat, he was assassinated, and then Morsi was involved. And then what you've got is Obama's fingers are all over the Muslim Brotherhood when all this started, that movement. And
he was a supporter of Morsi.
Yeah, it just literally gives you more credibility to what this kid was saying in the And that's what's interesting. I was looking that up after I saw that video, and he talked about Gog, and I began to look it up about Gog, and of course Gog's from the north, and what some of the those that derived say that what that means is it's Gog is from his land Magog. That Magog's the land of Gog, and
Larry, forgive me, but how much time do we have left so I know what to talk about?
We got about 5 minutes till the break at the hour, and we can just talk right on through and go another hour if you want to. We got 2 hours.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. I wasn't sure if it was an hour.
So
or
we're doing good right now, and it's pretty interesting stuff. Let's just go ahead and talk through our break. We'll just skip it, and we'll go on into what you guys want to talk about. But some of this stuff is really, really important stuff that people need to keep their eyes on. We're not telling people to go to be fearful. We're just saying, watch. Do what the Bible says. People, watch. Watch the events. You know, I hadn't shared with you, Richard, but I did share with Augusto that I had been in prayer, you know, through the Christmas holidays, especially because it was a quiet time for me, and we had really bad weather. And one of the things that I felt like my specific duty, and you know what I do with blogs and news and all of that, is really to chronicle or actually the events, the coming events in 2016, and you know, wherever these Torah codes are going and some of those things that we see happening and some of the dots being connected, I may have a busy time. I've got a feeling 2016 is going to be extremely busy, or you can call it 5776. But we're in a critical time. We're really in a critical time.
We are. Now we're seeing the stock market on the verge of collapsing. We lost something like $1.2 trillion in value last week. China shut their stock exchange down twice last week to prevent it from faltering too far. And those are not good signs. You know, it's like what I hope doesn't happen is that all of a sudden our money's worthless. I mean, we've been told that for decades now, and no one really has a solution to it. Bitcoin seems to have stabilized quite a bit. It's pretty much around $430 per coin. At once it had gone as high as like $1,100 Bitcoin, and then it failed. There was the Mt. Gox thing.
Yeah, let me ask you, Richard, on this subject. Recently, I've been watching Bread. Now, I'm not really an economic guy. I mean, as far as I'm not into the markets and all that, and I never have been. But I've been watching a lot of the behind-the-scenes movements, and there seems to be a movement by the rich men to bring the Chinese yuan into a power position over the dollar. We're kind of that movement's going on behind the scenes right now. We've been watching. Of course, China right now has really had problems, but they were moving the yuan just before this big Chinese dilemma, and that, of course, is probably a currency war. But what do you think on that? I know the dollar's being downplayed by a lot.
I think it's interesting because China and Russia have kind of formed an alliance, which is pretty dangerous. And now, of course, Putin is in Syria, and yet he's not really threatening Israel at this point, but he is working with Iran. And then you wonder, well, what's Iran doing in regards with North Korea as far as their nuclear projects are concerned? And then this past week, North Korea supposedly detonated an underground hydrogen bomb for the first time, creating like a 5.2 earthquake or thereabouts. All these things are very disturbing because you're talking about nuclear weapons in the hands of very unstable people who don't really give a darn how many people they kill. They just want to punish America.
Talking about unstable people, the leader of North Korea just claims, at least, to have detonated a hydrogen bomb, and you know those.
Yeah, that's what I was just referring to.
Yeah, he's that guy is crazy.
Yeah, that's what. So what I was saying is that particular alliance, a probable alliance between North Korea and Iran, is very troubling.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the rabbis have for years said, "Don't worry about Iran. What you need to worry about is North Korea." Rabbis have been saying that.
That's
fascinating.
Interesting. Yeah, that is. Let me ask you, Richard. Do they have a code that has indicated a problem with North Korea more so than Iran?
Well, we have lots of codes on Iran, lots of them. Nuclear Iran, atom in Iran, those kind of codes. There was one about the Obama agreement with atomic in Iran. I have a table about that. I'm going to actually be on a show that's on some local Fox affiliates up in Northern California, talking about the Torah codes for the next 2 Sunday evenings. I'm on this show. It's called Paranormal Central, hosted by a guy named Jeffrey Gonzalez, who's a really nice fellow. And I'm just mentioning that because he's going to show a lot of these tables on the program.
Wow. If you get a chance, Richard, later, send me a link to that show because I'd like to promote it or post it where people can
sure.
watch
Go to I think his website is paranormalcentral.com. I can look that up for you. But
okay.
It's just he has a show. I mean, they talk about everything: UFOs, Bigfoot, Torah codes. It's funny. That's the kind of crowd that's interested in the Torah codes. But I don't care. Good. Anyone who will listen is fine with me.
Hold on, I'll go get him back.
Okay. We'll just go on through the break, Dorothy. I'm not going to stop, but we'll just continue to talk. Augusto, this is just incredibly fascinating. I mean, incredibly fascinating data, you know?
Well, it's converging. It's like everything is converging. And, the thing is this, Larry, that we have had so many false alarms in the past, right? Like, like the year 2000, Y2K, and then the 2012, and on and on. So the people are just burned out. It reminds me of the story of the boy that cried wolf. He cried wolf, and cried wolf, and cried wolf, and cried wolf, and, and the people eventually didn't believe him, and when the real deal came. And so sometimes, I understand. I totally understand because I have seen all those books, 88 Reasons Why Jesus Christ Comes in 1988. I understand. But all that we're saying is keep your eyes open. There are a lot of signs, a lot of signals happening right now. And it's just like Jesus Christ said, that there were going to be signs in the sun, in the moon, in the stars, and the heavens and the earth, diversity of all kinds of signs on the earth, earthquakes, volcanic activity. And he said, when these things, all of these things together, not one or two, all of these things together, begin to happen, look up, because your redemption draws near. It doesn't mean he's coming right there and then, but he says, look up, get ready. And that is what I've been trying to share with the people. Just make sure that you're ready. Don't worry about the time or the specific year or whatever. Just be ready. This is a time to be ready. This is not a time to be with one foot in the world and another one in the kingdom of God. This is not the time to be with animosity towards others. This is not the time to be talking, slandering or things of that nature or keeping unforgiveness in the heart. This is not the time, not that ever was, but we are in a time that we need to make our calling and election sure. And this is what I've been trying to tell the people. Keep your nose clean. Keep your nose clean. Keep your eyes on Jesus. keep your eyes on the Lord and just walk circumspectly, and be aware of the fact that there are many things happening right now. And so, I truly believe that this is not a coincidence, Larry. That young kid having that experience, the experiences you've had, and other people have had, this is not a coincidence. And I don't know, maybe this year will be the economic collapse.
Well, we're watching it.
I'm just going to say I've got numerous Torah codes about financial collapse, some of which are in the film, and yet we can't say what year they're going to be in, but they do come up in parallel rows, and a couple of them were found by Professor Rips himself, which is very credible. So we know something's about to happen. But yeah, we don't want to say, that it's this year, except when we constantly see these numbers appear that we've never seen before in such rapidity. I can't just be silent and not say anything about it. It's like, look, I'm not making predictions, but I don't understand why this is happening, and I just want you to know about it. That's always the approach I try to take. But even then I get criticized. People.
I understand.
But it's like, it's not that I'm trying to make a prediction. I always provide my point of view is I don't understand this, and I just want you to know about it.
There you go.
I think it's interesting.
Let me swing to another subject for just a minute, because we've got about 55 minutes or less than an hour. Tell us about this methane leak. How it started? What's going on? I know you're right in the middle of it. I mean, but
I'm only
and I hope you're doing okay.
Less than 2 miles away from it.
Yeah, and from what I'm hearing, a lot of this it involves a large area, and it's been compared to the BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. So, what's going on?
Well, back in October, just before I left for Israel, and I didn't smell anything at the time, I flew out, got home in the middle of November, opened the front door, and I said, Mary, do we have a gas leak around the house? Because I could smell gas, like you had the stove on and it hadn't lit yet, that kind of smell. And so I was about to grab a wrench and go outside until I found the leak and turn it off. And, usually it's not explosive unless you can hear gas actually escaping. If you hear like a kind of a sound, then it's explosive. A lot of times old houses have something that the gas companies call weepers, which is just like tiny little gas leaks around, unions in the gas line going to various places in your home. And you know how they check to see if there's a leak? They light a match. That's what they do. And they have a glove. I've watched him do this when I was a little kid. I hung out with the gas company guy when he came over because I wanted to learn what he was doing. How do you figure this out? He just would light a match and look for leaks. And then if he did find one, he had a glove on his hand. He'd just grab it and it would go right out. So he said those are called weepers, and they're not explosive because there's not enough gas coming out to collect and make an explosion. He said, well, if you hear it, then it's explosive. Well, what happened here was that up on the hill overlooking Porter Ranch, Chatsworth, and Northridge in California here is SoCal Gas. And they have wells up there that go down 8,000 feet into an underground reservoir that stores a lake-size area full of gas, of natural gas. And this gas is used to fire power plants in the area. It's used to heat everybody's homes. I mean, it's so much gas that they use that for everything. And they have 95 wells that were drilled into that lake of gas. And most of those wells are what you'd consider pretty ancient. The one that broke in, it was a well that was sunk in 1954. It's a 7-inch gas line. It blew out some 400 feet below the surface, big crack in it. And most of these wells are supposed to have a concrete jacket around this pipe that goes down several hundred feet underground. I don't know if this one does or not, but they had they were supposed to have a valve to shut it down. That valve was removed sometime in the 70s, so they had no way to stop the thing.
Oh man!
So this thing went off, and since it's such a deep well, that's what makes it like the Deepwater Horizon well. It's drilled into this underground lake of methane that's 8,000 feet below ground. 8,000 feet. So because it's so low, because it's so deep, it's under tremendous pressure. I believe what I've read so far says it was under 2,700 pounds per square inch of pressure.
Wow.
They tried pumping salt water down there. They tried doing everything, mud, everything to plug it, and it would just blow it right back out because it was under so much pressure. So methane is basically colorless. You can't even tell it's happening. This is how they've hidden this disaster because nobody can see it. But then recently they came out with infrared photography and took pictures of it, and you can see this enormous plume of gas. In an article that I just wrote for L.A. Marzulli's News Mag, I show these infrared pictures. And
I saw that.
Then Rachel Maddow, who has a show on MSNBC, did a really nice expose of the whole thing and had moving images in full color, which looked like FLIR cam images. And you could just see this enormous plume of gas sinking into the area down below, which is Porter Ranch and the surrounding areas.
Oh.
So it's made a lot of us sick. Most of my neighbors have moved out. Now, I've stuck with it because recently in the LA Times, they mentioned that they somehow diverted some of that gas and put it back into the reservoir. Meanwhile, they're digging a second well to try to plug the leaking one. The second well that they're digging now is something like 5,000 feet below the surface and won't reach the origin of the leaking well for probably another month.
Oh, man.
So what they've said they've done, as best I know, is they've cut down the pressure from 2,700 pounds to more like 1,500. And I haven't smelled it since they did that. But yet I don't know how much the methane's affecting us. I can't tell. I don't want to imagine I'm being affected. I caught the flu right after Christmas, and I've never had a time where I was having nosebleeds and things like that, and I think that some of that is attributable to the leak. But when you're spewing 55.11 tons of methane an hour into the atmosphere,
wow.
They're saying it's equivalent of 160,000 cars operating on the streets for a year.
This sounds a lot like what happened in the Gulf of Mexico, Richard. Maybe not as bad, but it sounds a lot like it.
Well, yeah, this is actually the worst natural gas spill in U.S. history. And basically it accounts for 25% of the pollution emissions for the entire state of California. And that's like millions and millions of cars for a year. This is 25%, that much greenhouse gas emissions. And what's really telling is that only on January 6th did the governor, Jerry Brown, come down to check it out. And he's the big, climate change nonsense guy, and doesn't even come down to check out the deal. And meanwhile, Aaron Brockovich is down here and everything else. So we know the climate change thing is a complete global. It's a globalist tool to try to get everybody to conform. It's total nonsense.
Sure. Absolutely.
And and most thinking people realize that.
Is there like an evacuation a warning at least now for the residents in that region?
I get mail from the gas company every few days telling us their progress. They will put you somewhere else. They will move. They have moved a lot of people. Some of the children in the area have gotten sick and they had to move. Some of the dogs or animals that live outside apparently have died. it's very strange. I mean, but yet what I've been waiting to see, and they've never provided, is what I would call a propagation map to see where is this plume going at different hours of the day. Really, what part of town is really being affected the most, and they aren't showing us that. But there was a huge conference about it at a local church, and it's a feeding frenzy for the lawyers who are putting together class action lawsuits. And it's a horrendous problem, and it won't be stopped. And probably we're looking at perhaps the end of March.
You guys better pray that it rains a lot.
Well, fortunately, God's blessed us with a lot of rain this past week that we desperately needed, because California was just parched. You wouldn't believe the extent of it. It was just awful. And we're supposed to have more rain next week, so I'm grateful for that. What I don't know is if the rain coming through the gas is if it's raining down some kind of weird chemical composite of what it's going through. I don't know, but they've also declared a no-fly zone over that area. Some pilots have worried that it could cause an engine fire if they flew through the wrong area, and yet the FAA has said they don't want pilots getting woozy and dizzy flying through it and affect the way they're flying. So they've caused it to be a no-fly zone. Now, here's an interesting thing, but did you guys know that in the 50s, in a nearby area, just not far away from what is happening now, in the Santa Susana Mountains, in 1949, the Atomic Energy Commission wanted a place to do remote nuclear testing for work that was considered too dangerous to do in a populated area. And this was in conjunction with a company called Rocketdyne that helped put our men into space. And they built 10 low-power nuclear reactors in the area. And in that day, since it was so long ago, they didn't build containment domes for any of them.
Oh, didn't know that.
One of them experienced a partial meltdown.
Oh my Lord!
And because
I didn't know
what they were, because they didn't know what they were doing in the early 50s, they would try to burn some of their nuclear waste. I mean, they had everything, including plutonium, that they were working with, and they had it outdoors, and they called them sodium pit burns. And they would burn this contaminated stuff in the open air to get rid of it. And there were 22 guys involved of it. 27 men that were involved in doing this, burning this stuff. And of the 27 men, 22 died of cancers.
Oh, I could believe that. Oh, my Lord.
Yeah. So now there's about 500,000 people that reside within 10 miles of that area. And since I also read that this particular nuclear disaster poisoned 10 or 11 wells that were dug in the area, water wells, drinking water, it made me wonder, if the wells were contaminated, then what does that mean as far as the gas that's coming out of that area?
Oh, man, that's a lot of questions. That's a lot of very pointed questions.
Yeah, could the gas be contaminated, or part of the gas be contaminated from nuclear waste? I mean, we don't know. They're certainly not telling us if that's the case. But, you just have to hope for the best, because, the government's never going to tell you the truth. Certainly not a gas company that's basically trying to survive the process and the lawsuits. And I'm sure it's going to be several $1 billion they're going to have to come up with to fix this. And all because they didn't maintain their pipes.
Wow.
Yeah, but the one thing that keeps just jumping at me in this disaster, the one that happened also in the Gulf of Mexico, is the engineering fiasco of these systems. I mean, and the proof is in the pudding, the fact that it cannot be shut off. And there is no relief, no valves that they could shut off, no emergency safety valves that they could shut off. Nothing. It just boggles me. it's beyond understanding, how these kinds of things could happen in our day and age. Of course, I know many of these systems are very old, but still.
It's always follow the money, and the reason I say that is because they don't want to spend money to revive the corrupted infrastructure we have. And there's too much greed and corruption in business to put the money back into the things that need updating and repairing. Some of these wells should have been shut down decades ago and new ones put in. There's nothing wrong with burning natural gas. It's pretty clean normally. Methane burns really cleanly and is basically non-polluting compared to so many other things. It's cheap. Our gas bills are usually really inexpensive. And, you can cook with it just fine and all of that. So there's lots of advantages to it, but not when you don't maintain it. It really becomes dangerous at that point. And that's the problem here. They don't want to spend the money to repair their gas lines. But, I think it's ruined the property value in this area. Nobody wants to buy a house right beneath a major gas resource where another one of these could happen.
Do you have any plans, Richard, to maybe relocate?
Yeah, I've been looking at other places to go, but knowing what I know, it's like I really don't know where that would be to move. I don't know where maybe it would be incrementally safer, but knowing what seems to be coming this year, I don't know if going anywhere is all that much safer. You know what I mean?
I hear you.
I've even thought about, if all these things are supposed to happen, if Yeshua is supposed to return this year, I would kind of like to be there to see that, I don't know if I can afford to move to Israel, but if this is really going to happen, it'd be kind of fun to be there, and maybe we'll get bombed in the process and die before it happens, but we can't think that way. We can't be worried about dying.
Nuclear holocaust, a tsunami, or asphyxiated. Oh, Lord have mercy.
Yeah, it's like, this is not all there is to life, people. This is like one aspect of it. In fact, I always say this when we talk about near-death experiences. It was Roger Ebert's near-death experience, which I just think is the coolest. Remember Roger Ebert, the film critic? How erudite he was, and the way he would describe things was so phenomenal, and he's dying of cancer, and his wife's there at his bedside. It was very before I got him. When I read it, I just laughed really hard because it sounded like him so totally. And she said he slipped away for just a moment and went unconscious. And when he woke up, he had this angelic look on his face, and he looked up and looked at her and said, all this incredibly elaborate hoax.
Oh, my.
Oh, my.
Somebody came up with a good question in the chat room, Richard. Somebody asked what would happen in the midst of all that's going on if a big earthquake hit right there in that area.
Yeah, that would not be pleasant.
That's happened before. It's happened before. It happened in 1994. Remember the Northridge earthquake?
Oh, yeah.
Well, Northridge is only a couple miles from here. So, they've had an earthquake, and these pipes held up. This one, I think what we have here is the result of corrosion more than an earthquake. Even though we had an earthquake the other day here, we had another 4-point-something. Very strange feeling earthquake. And we have earthquakes all the time. We're used to it. We don't even think anything of it. But I suppose if there was a fault that ran under that mountain where they do this, and it just hit it the right way, it could be disastrous. You could have several of these ancient pipes popping off all at the same time, in which case you'd want to get the heck out of here completely because there'd be no way you could even breathe at that point.
Oh, man. Yeah. Well, Stan Deo, who you've met, Richard, Stan Deo's always told everybody on the West Coast, or whatever you do, have a boat out in the backyard. Whether you're near the water or not, it'll come to you.
Yeah, well, I have to believe that if that scripture is referring to everybody and not just Israel that, look up for your redemption, draw up nigh, that I would think that we would be, rescued from something like that. But even if we're not, dying isn't all it's cracked up to be.
Oh, I know. Let me ask you a question, Richard. Because I thought about this. I would have asked Dan Gordon, but I hadn't seen him lately, and he's really been busy. I mean, he's been out of pocket.
Yeah.
But,
I talked to him
when I had Dan Gordon on the radio show, I was asking him about, Hamas and the Hezbollah and Iran and all the attacks that were very close to happening around Israel. And I asked him what was Israel really doing and their outlook. And you know what? He gave me kind of a strange answer. It makes sense, but he didn't define any more than that. And I just went on with the show and didn't. But what he said, Dan told me, he said Israel is playing for time. Very simply, Israel is playing for time. Now, let me ask, do you have a clue what that is, the rabbis, what they're talking about? Or is that time for the Messiah to return, or a time for the end time situations? What do you think he meant by that? I'll try to get him on another show sometime, but I wanted to ask you what you thought.
I didn't hear the whole discussion you're referring to, so I'm not exactly sure, but I know, we've talked about this. In fact, I interviewed Dan just on my iPhone because I went to dinner with him just a couple nights ago, and L.A. put it up on his blog. I don't know if you got to see that, but you should watch that if you get a chance, because he talked about what's going on in northern Israel and how Hezbollah has come in and attacked the IDF with IEDs, and so Israel had to strike back. I mean, that was in the news this week.
Yeah.
And
I saw that.
He said Netanyahu was saying that, look, if you guys do this and if you guys really come after us, then we're not going to hold back this time, and we're going to take it to clean the whole mess out, clear up into Lebanon. And Netanyahu wasn't afraid to say, that's it, if you guys do this, then you're toast. And buying for time, I think, excuse me, I think they all know this is eventually going to happen, and they're just getting ready for it. And, of course, Hamas basically is evil and do terrible things to their own people. This is what the news media just doesn't ever report. And we try to do that on Watcher's 9 to show really what they're doing. But, I mean, they have the Palestinians completely under their control, or they kill them. I mean, they're just like, this is a real evil regime. And there's one of the clips that is in Watcher's 9 that says, we're not here, we're not driving our people to destruction, we're driving them to death. And Dan made the comment, someone who's in charge of a country that is trying to basically drive the whole country to death is not really considering if they take care of simple things like water and sewage. They don't care.
That's right.
So they've created a humanitarian disaster in the Gaza Strip.
Which everybody blames on Israel. Everybody blames that on Israel, of course,
And Israel has nothing to do with it. Israel's just trying to keep rockets from being fired from the Gaza Strip across the border to people that live in kibbutzes in the area. And I had dinner with Sarah Golan and her family before we left Israel. Dan Gordon was there. Todd Heinrichs was there. My friend Bob Williams was there, and we were talking about the Iron Dome missiles, and the kid goes, "Oh, I got one." I said, "You're kidding me." He said, "No." He comes out with a nose cone to an Iron Dome missile, and sets it on the dinner table. And I said, "Wow, I've never seen one in this great a condition." So Bob had to look at it, because Bob's my special effects friend from Special Effects Unlimited in Hollywood, and here he is holding a real Iron Dome missile in his hand, and it was awesome. I mean,
wow.
But then they had a Hamas rocket that came onto their property and exploded, and could have killed her grandmother, and the IDF let them keep it as a memento. And then right across the street from their house were tanks and rockets being fired. They've got concrete barriers that Israel put up to protect just citizens from mortars being fired from Hamas across the street. I mean, this is really what's happening. Hamas fires mortars.
That's how they live every day, isn't it?
Yeah, I've driven on that street. I've hung out. I've had dinner with them. They've had school buses hit by mortar attacks, little children killed on the way to school. I mean, this is what Hamas is doing. It's horrible. And
hey, Richard, did you read that article about the gift that Netanyahu received from the Palestinians and his response to it? It was really interesting. This came out in November, around November 20, and what the article basically says is that Netanyahu received an item from the leader of Hamas, right, during a recent ceasefire. And so the leader of this Palestinian terrorist organization, Hamas, Khaled Marshal, sent a gift, It was actually a gesture of hate and contempt for the Prime Minister of Israel. And he put it in a box with a note. And after, he checked the box for safety reasons, Netanyahu opened the box and saw the content was cow dung. And so he saw the note written on it, and he said, for you and the proud people of the Zionist entity. So Netanyahu, who is literate in Arab, right, in Arabic, he looked at the note, and he decided how to best answer back, reciprocate. And so basically, he sent a gift back to the Hamas leader. And when the Hamas leader received the gift, he thought it was a bomb, but to his surprise, it contained a tiny computer chip. And the chip was rechargeable with solar energy. It had a 1.8 terabyte memory and had an output about 3D hologram display capable of functioning in any kind of cellular phone, right? Tablet, laptop, whatever. And so it's one of the world's most advanced technology. And this is what he wrote in a tiny label, Invented and produced in Israel. Now, the note of Netanyahu is really the icing on the cake. And he had personally handwritten in Arabic, Hebrew, French, and English, Very, very, very carefully written note. And this is what he said. Every leader can only give the best his people can produce.
I love it.
Isn't that classy?
Yeah,
that is incredible.
That's typical. People don't realize how advanced Israel is. They just don't get it. They think it's this backwards place where everybody's wearing smocks or something, but it's like these guys are brilliant there. I mean, a lot of technology comes out of Israel. People don't realize that.
Speaking of technology, Richard, I know that when you were in Israel, you used your new drone. And for number one, I'm glad that nobody shot it down. But how did it work? How did it work out for you?
Well, it was great. The first time I used it, we had trouble with it locking up to GPS in the area. It couldn't seem to find all the satellites like it did when I was at home. And so what I had to do was download an upgrade to the firmware, and I installed that in my hotel room. And the next day I went out, it worked perfectly. Now this was for everybody who's a drone lover wants to know what it is. It's a unique Typhoon Q500 4K version, and it's an amazing machine. I'm just so impressed with it. I mean, it has features where it'll automatically follow you wherever you go. It will watch you as you're traveling. It flies so that the camera image quality that you get looks like it's on a tripod way up in the air. It's that stable.
Wow.
I don't know how it's so great, so we got incredible images with that thing. And the only place I couldn't fly it was over Jerusalem, even though I wanted to. But there were so many stabbings going on at the time we were there that they were afraid that the Palestinians would think that we're spying on them or something. So I even checked with the police to see if I could fly it, and they wanted to let me, but they were afraid it might cause problems. So I said, okay, I get it, no problem. And I stayed right across the way from Jerusalem. I stayed in our favorite hotel, which is the Mount Zion Hotel, which is an awesome place to stay if you happen to go there. Plug. Shameless plug for a great hotel. Yeah, I'm not getting any advantage for doing that. I just think the people there are wonderful, and you get a great view of Jerusalem from your window, and it's a great place.
Now let me ask you, Richard, your trip over there. Now, when is some of that data going to come out? Will it be in maybe a Watchers coming up, or in one of your documentaries? Are you going to do a documentary?
Well, L.A. and I are talking about Watchers 10 right now. In fact, we're already working on it. We have an interview coming up this month that we have to do. And, of course, I'm also helping L.A. with his new studio setup and trying to get all that going. And that's going to be a little rough for the next couple of weeks or so, but then it's going to start looking a lot more professional. So keep a watch on L.A.'s show that he's doing. It'll be up on his blog at lamarzulli.net. And because we both decided this was the only way we could keep up with events that are happening. They're happening faster than we can produce a film to show people. So that's one thing we're doing. But meanwhile, Watchers 10 is underway, and I've already shot quite a bit of the show, or at least maybe almost half of the show is probably shot, and we're going to be shooting more. If we get what we hope to get, it might be a shorter than normal Watchers, so we can get it out sooner. Well,
I know Watchers 9 was really long, but I enjoyed just every minute of it. I mean, it was an incredible. It was great.
Thank you. No, it was the longest one I've ever done. It was an hour and 50 minutes long, and yet I couldn't figure out how to make it any shorter. And yet I have constantly people writing us telling us they want them to be longer. So I thought, well, okay, here you go.
It was like a full feature movie.
Different lengths. Yeah, it was like the length of a feature film, pretty much. It doesn't seem that long when you're watching it, I don't think, but it's got a lot of interesting stuff in it.
Hey,
yeah, I watched it, Richard.
Oh, go ahead.
I watched it, and that take you had on with Gil Broussard was pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, Gil is quite an interesting guy. Oh, this goes kind of like what he was talking about. Remember he said that if we are going to see Planet X, it could be next March, right?
Right.
Well, coincidentally, last month when I was hanging out with Rabbi Glazerson, he had done a table on Messiah codes. And I didn't have time to put this up because it was almost Christmas time. My entire family had flown here, and it was like, I couldn't be up in the studio editing. I had to be with our family over Christmas. So I cut it a little short, the piece that I did. If you want to see that, it's up at our official Torah Code website at endtodarkness.com. But he had another table that I didn't have time to put up, and it basically was Messiah, and it was in 57, 76, and then the word Purim came up. Now, what's interesting about that is that goes with the possible prediction of Planet X could appear in March or April. That's during the time of Purim. Isn't that interesting? And I don't know. Well, I've always felt like if you believe the Matthew 24 account as being kind of a blow of what's supposed to happen, then when you read that, and also if you read Doug Elwell's book on Planet X, there seems to be some major disaster that happens when the abomination stands in the holy place, and after which there seems to be an astronomical thing happen. The sun will be darkened, the moon will be turned to blood, the stars will fall from heaven, etc., etc. Now, for that to occur, causes us to wonder if some astronomical event is happening. And it's described in ancient verbiage, the way they would see it if they were standing on the Earth. Well, the stars falling from heaven could be meteor trail from something entering around the Earth. This has happened before, and that's the way it was described. The sun will be dark and the moon turn to blood, means that there's something that's affecting the sun, or perhaps clogging up the atmosphere so that it looks darkened, or maybe the sun actually physically is darkened. We know that sometimes when two major planets or a very large planet comes next to a star, it can cause like a mini supernova kind of thing to occur. We don't know, but I've often wondered if that's the sign of the coming of the Son of Man. That's what Doug Elwell seems to think it is. I don't think it's all that crazy.
I totally agree with that, Richard. That's the sign of the Son of Man, absolutely.
Notion. Yeah, because why then would all of the earth mourn? Why would all of these crazy things happen? And then I talked with him about the idea that, it says two will be working in the mill, one will be taken and the other left, two will be working at, that passage, right, guys?
Right.
It ends in a very enigmatic way. It says, where the carcass is, that's where the vultures will gather. Some versions call it the eagles will gather.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's some kind of carnivorous creature that eats dead things, is what I think Jesus was talking about. And I told Gil, I said, I'm beginning to think that when the stars fall from heaven, if we're talking about meteorites, that some people are going to get killed by that. That's what it means. They're taken. They're killed. They're taken out of this life.
Yeah, that's an interesting take.
And that's why the vultures will gather. I mean, then all of a sudden that enigmatic statement that I've never understood might make sense. Now, I'm certainly not saying that's what's going to happen because I don't know, but to me that explanation makes more sense than anything else I've heard so far.
Well, Richard, that scripture you mentioned about the sun turning to darkness and the moon to blood, that, there is a parallel between Matthew 24 and Revelation 6, and especially the sixth seal. When it's opened, if you look at it side by side, it is almost exactly the same. The sun turns to darkness, the moon to blood, and then the stars fall from heaven like a tree, scatters her figs when shaken by the wind, which speaks of meteors and asteroids falling. And then in Matthew, you read right there, it says, and after the tribulation of these days shall appear the sign of the Son of Man. And then, in the book of Revelation, after that happens, right after that happens, there is a great earthquake. And, the rich men of the earth, the slaves, the poor, all kindred, they hide. And they said, the rich men of the earth hide in the rocks and say to them, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the wrath of the Lamb has come. And if you look at Matthew, right there parallel to that is when he says, and I will send my angels, and they will gather my elect from the four corners of the earth. And so there is a very, very incredible parallel there between those two. And then in chapter 7, and this is just for yourself, so, to read it, meditate on it. On chapter 7, that's when the multitude appears with white robes. Right there, and that's when John is asked, who are these? And he says, I don't know, sir. Who? I don't know. And these are they that came out of great tribulation. So, I totally agree with your statement. I think that is the sign of the Son of Man, Planet X.
It would make scriptural sense to me. I mean, a lot of people differ in that opinion. I've talked to people that's what I think it is, and a lot of people, no, I think it's going to be a cross in heaven, or it's going to be something, like that. I don't think it'll be something as literal as that, because why then would all men mourn that they saw a cross in the sky? That wouldn't be enough to make anybody mourn. They'd go, what the heck is that? But if you knew especially your ass was grass and there was this big planet coming to whack you, I think you would mourn. I think it would be a totally different solution. So that's just what I think. But if it happens, typically, and according to Gil, the last few times it has happened in Scripture has been during the months of March or April, during Purim or during Passover. I think is interesting. Okay. So that if that's this year, that's not much time from now.
Well, again, it coincides with the Torah codes that you and Rabbi Glazerson were discussing, and the Jubilee year. I mean, the year 57, 76. I mean, like we were sharing in the first hour, the everything is just coming together to a head. It seems this year. So again, we are not saying this is the year when the Lord is coming, but just keep your eyes peeled and keep your heart right.
And did you guys know that there was a group of Jews in Israel that are trying to start their own Israel state?
No, I did not know that.
I think it's the settlement movement or something, and they're doing terroristic acts. They're killing Muslims. They're trying to install their own king and have a new Judea. And this is happening now. This is something that Dan and I were discussing this morning. It's unbelievable. So Israel is like being surrounded by enemies. It has enemies within its own country. It's just, it's amazing. Yet when I'm there, I don't feel scared or anxious or worried. And in fact, Israel has a vibe that I've never experienced anywhere I've ever been before. It's really strange. It's you just feel like it's a special place. I don't know how else to describe it.
Well, I was watching some of the news recently too, and the left has a big move on in America, and what I've noted is there's a left in Israel also doing the very same thing.
Yes,
it seems
that's
like
true.
it seems like the attacks that are coming upon Christianity and Jews alike, including the U.S. and the Western powers and Israel also, they're all coming at the same time. That's what's so odd, is this surrounding and attack, it's all going on right now.
Well, not only that, the Pope's doing and saying some very strange things besides. I mean, it's like, it's unexplainable what's going on. And I don't know. It just seems like something's got to give. The rise of Donald Trump has been really, really entertaining to me, to see how he's cutting through so much of the BS that's been coming out, the politically correct nonsense that's being spouted off by the government, and to get their way on any issue, and basically thwarting the will of the people in so many things. And Trump's just kind of cutting through all of that. And now he's got even some of the Democrats on his side, which is really
odd.
Pretty incredible.
That is really odd.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah, that's what we've been praying, and a lot of people praying, Richard and Larry, is that all the lies and all the hidden agendas and all of these things that they have been hiding, these powers that be, the elite, they have been hiding for so long, all that will be exposed, that all these things be exposed either by Trump or by, Ted Cruz or by Carson or whoever, but that all these things will be exposed and the people will finally get to see the light of the truth.
Well, I do know that so I was watching today, Richard, that 13 hours. I was watching that, including Benghazi, and do you know, the truth seems like it is finally leaking out. I've got to watch that movie. It looks like it's going to be powerful and a lot of truth in it. 13 Hours is the name of it. And just to go along with what Augusto was saying, I think in these last days or hours or whatever that we're living, the truth is, no matter if it's beat up as biblically and laying out in the streets, trampled all over by the powers that be, it's still there. It's still visible. We're seeing the truth. All this evil is coming out to be exposed.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's right. I agree. And I think Trump knows that 9/11 was full of baloney and that it was never really vetted correctly and that we never heard the true story. And he's only recently mentioned that, all the Arabs that lived were given a free ticket home and not implicated in it. And of course, a lot of it seemed like it was an inside job. A lot of people think that, including me, because there was too much coordination of the military and of so many other things that happened before and after, where it's that the way they got rid of all of the evidence, shipped it off to China to melt it down. I mean, it was unconscionable what they did.
Your conspiracy theory, Richard.
Well, to me, it's more than a conspiracy theory, because you can't physically make buildings collapse that way.
I agree.
Unless you rig them.
Totally agree.
And
it's conspiracy
also
fact,
falling
actually.
At free fall speed. Yeah, and we've seen buildings catch on fire like that one did just about a week ago, right? There was a high-rise building in Dubai that caught on fire during New Year's. Remember that? And the whole thing was engulfed in flames. Yeah, it didn't collapse.
No.
There was no collapse of the building. Buildings don't collapse. Steel frame buildings don't collapse. It's like saying, I'm putting this pan on my stove to heat it up, and the stove collapsed. What?
I like that. I like that one.
That's ridiculous. I mean, it doesn't get hot enough to do that, and jet fuel doesn't get hot enough to melt steel. It didn't sit there and burn long enough to do that kind of damage. And everybody said that there were explosions. People came up from the elevator shaft from the basement on fire. Now tell me how that would have happened from an airplane on the 83rd floor. It just doesn't make any sense.
Hey, let me ask you something. We've got about 7 minutes left. Let me ask you something really way out there, Richard.
Sure.
Is there any more work being done on the implants? Anybody working in that area? Have they come up with any new conclusions?
Not recently. I mean, a lot of that. There's been some things that I can't really talk about on the air.
Oh, okay.
But there's been some troubling things happen, and also we've talked with Roger's wife, and she's just trying to get some of the implants back under her care again. And we've offered to take some of them and do more testing on them. Yeah. But at this point, there's so much else going on, and UFOs are still being seen routinely. And I even have a friend now who I tend to worry about quite often that calls UFOs down routinely. He surrounds himself with people with HD cameras and telescopic lenses, and they all shoot it and see it. I mean, I put that in Watchers 9, but he's done it since then, and he emails me all the time. So this is a phenomenon. I mean, what do you do when you're calling down UFOs and they appear? And there's some kind of a moving entity in the sky, and everybody's filming it. And this happens in California. I mean, I have no explanation for it. It's happening. And then Jaime Massah gave me 500 video clips of UFOs, I looked at all of them. It took me days.
Uh-huh.
And what I discovered was, I put some of this in an article a month ago in LA's Newsmag, and I included a half a dozen of these clips. And what we're seeing all over the world are patterns of lights hovering over cities, anywhere from 3 to a dozen lights moving in formation in almost every city in the world. And it's been filmed over lakes, over cities, over inhabited areas, and these things move intelligently as a group, and then they disappear.
Well, let me bring up something really. You guys remember the movie Independence Day, don't you? Where the aliens came, their arrival. Well, Independence Day. Yeah. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
They've got a brand new Independence Day. They come back, coming out.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see what they got.
It's we're in a really crazy time. I mean, we really are.
Well, I mean,
and all these movies are foretelling what's going to happen in the next, year or two. That's what they're forecasting right now. So
one would think that some of that is being released as kind of soft disclosure in the movie industry. I'm not close enough to the people doing that to be able to say one way or the other, but I know that some of the producers in Hollywood really believe in the Sitchin theory, which is pretty much like when you see a Ridley Scott film. What was that film he did where they were looking for our creator? Remember that?
Prometheus.
And it was so much like Prometheus. Thank you. It was so much like Aliens Part 2. It was like, to me, it was like, okay, we've seen this. We've always seen these eggs open up and these horrible creatures come out. So when I saw that, I kind of like said, oh, not another one. But it was absurd. But yet, no one will just admit the fact that creation has anything to do with the biblical account. And I'm sure the biblical account is described in very simple language that where, if we could have just seen it, we would have described it in a much more technical way and we could have explained what happened better. But that's all we have. That's in the Torah,
listen, guys,
the first 5 books.
We've only got about 3 minutes left. Richard, would you give people...
Sure.
Use this to promote anything you want to promote the next 3 minutes here, and
well,
tell people where to look at your data, where to go to your data, and what they need to look at.
Well, thanks, Larry. You can always go to pinlight.com. That's my website, PINLIGHT. Pin, like you stick a pin in something, and light, like a light bulb, Pinlight. And that has watchers and the Torah codes and snippets of all of those films. And then if you want to see the Torah code site, it's endtodarkness.com. Endtodarkness.com. And that has some clips of the latest little gematria pieces that I did with Rabbi Glazerson. And then if you want to see what's happening on a daily basis, go to L.A. Marzulli's blog, lamarzulli.net. And go to his WordPress site, and you can just click the link that says blog, and you can follow kind of what's going on in the world. He does a good job of keeping up with it, and LA's a type A personality. He's got more energy than like 5 people. So
that's for sure. That's for sure.
It's a good one. Just in your links of things to look at, that's a good place to go to.
Okay. Augusto, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Augusto, give out your address and your radio show location.
Sure, thank you, Larry, and it's just 3 W's, theappearance.com, www.theappearance.com, and it's been so good to be with you again, Richard and Larry. Always a pleasure, and maybe we'll get to do it again, Lord willing. But be blessed, my brother.
Well, thank you, Augusto, and it's so good having you with us. And Richard, anything you want to talk about? We got about a minute left. Anything you want to leave the people with? Any thoughts?
Well, I just think it's interesting what's going on. I had to switch to my phone here for just a moment, but I think it's interesting what's happening in the world. I think you need to, if you've always thought that the Bible was a book of fairy tales, I think you need to give it another look. I'm not a preacher. I don't particularly want to be pounding away at people and preaching to them. I just want them to look at it and decide for themselves what they think. But that means you have to get in there and study on your own. And I think some of the links that you've just heard can at least get you started down that track. And if you have questions, I'm sure that either Larry or me or someone else would be able to help.
Well, thank you, Richard. Listen, bless you so much. Our prayers are out there for you, covering you during this time of trouble you're having around your home in that region. And listen, I thank you for a wonderful show. This has been most interesting. We'll try to do it again sometime later, Lord willing, as Augusto
it's my
said.
pleasure. Thanks to both of you.
Thank you, Richard. And shalom, my friend, and shalom, Augusto. Shalom. And Dorothy, thank you for...
Shalom, shalom. Bye-bye.
Amen.
And right, at this point, it's Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. God bless. Bye-bye now.
Bye.